Mark sighed with relief as he led his father up towards the keep. He was very glad that he'd found the settings in the safe zone screens that allowed him to accept the group as a whole into the safe zone, but he'd have to make sure that it had been a good plan to do so by asking his father if there was anyone to keep an eye on. Because I don't need another incident like Tim trying to take the place over, or the Stearns having to be evicted, he thought. And I'll still need to process each of them individually as residents eventually, too. At least this way I can make sure about each of them first if we wait a while. So, Dad, legionaries? Mark said. For most of them, yes, Sean Cavanaugh replied. His gaze kept moving from side to side, looking at the buildings and fields in the safe zone, then flickering back to his son. As of yesterday, he still hadn't been sure that his son was alive. Mark's eyes were also drawn towards his father, as he'd had the same uncertainty. Most of them? Mark asked. Well, it's a class, you know. I did get your email detailing all of that, but I never managed to get a reply out. The hotel we were in had lousy Wi-Fi, and it went out while I was still reading your email. Well, reading it and wondering if you'd gone over the edge. Despite the message that flooded everyone's vision, I still couldn't accept things. It took one of the other conference attendees to drive it into my skull. Amusingly enough, they did it by showing me a book series they were reading where something very similar happened. When the main character started fighting with a makeshift spear, one made of rebar, that's when my brain started moving towards the Roman legions. Sean broke off to look around again, shaking his head in amazement. Anyhow, the guy convinced me that you weren't crazy. He said it sounded like you had a clue as to what was coming and that I should listen. I raced through that book so I had some idea of what was coming. Not that it was identical or anything, but a general idea at least. Rudy, that's his name, was also the one that I bought the display pieces in my office from. Yeah, sorry about that. We're making use of that whole set. Split up a bit, though, Mark said, embarrassed. That's fine. As you saw, we have more of it. Rudy's the one who makes that stuff, and he lives in the same town the conference was in, so we went to his place to gear up. The cell phone towers went down while I was reading that book. Some of those 5G conspirators took advantage of all the panic and took down all the cell towers around town, destroyed them utterly, so we were totally out of communication, and I never did get a chance to reply to your email. So, anyhow, when it came time to claim things, we were set with Rudy's gear. Mark interrupted his father for a moment. We have enough room for all the people with you. I don't know about their preferences, but there's a barracks that gives those who live in it some minor combat bonuses. There's also a lot of apartments still empty in the apartment building we just passed. Sean had spent several long seconds staring at the brand new apartment building as they passed, so now he nodded. I don't know what everyone intends to do, but I can pass it along to them. We've got more than just legionaries, though. That's the class for most of them. But your mom got a different one. Armakustos. Seeing his son's confusion, he explained. It's the equivalent of a quartermaster in the Roman legions. We also have a clinicus, that's a healer of sorts. He even gets some healing spells. Finally, we have a pair of NCOs, an Optio and a Tesserarius. Think of the Optio as my second in command, and the Tesserarius